Brian Ndlovu was a 9th grader at Queen's High School here in Gauteng, and he died late last month after allegedly being forced to drink poison by a bully. He was only 15. As school and education authorities investigate, this tragedy reanimates the trauma of school bullying and how it has the power to destroy families and society as a whole. My guests tonight are Matume Chilwani, the Gauteng MEC for Education, Victorine Mbongshu, an involved parenting conversationalist, and Dr. Shahida Umar, who's the director of the Teddy Bear Clinic. Thank you all very much for coming through tonight. And let's kick off with you, MEC. We can start with the latest on this particular story before we broaden out the discussion. The principal telling the media the school didn't receive any reports of bullying with regards to Brian. The family says he was bullied. There was also an incident the day before his passing involving an altercation, or the day of his passing involving this altercation between him and another pupil. And apparently the parents were meant to go to the school the next day. His parents didn't because he passed away. There's so many different aspects to this, aren't there? What can you share with us tonight, MEC?
Good evening. Good evening to your panelists and your viewers. As we have clarified yesterday, I did go to the school and had engagement with the school leadership. And the information is still the same. There was an incident, and in that incident, it was found that the late deceased Brian was the one who slept. He was in grade 9, he slept in grade 8 then. And then that's when the school called the teacher who saw them, was able to apprehend them and taking them through to the deputy principal, and then the deputy principal communicated with the parents. From what we have, there was no other incident really from the school, for at least from Brian throughout the day. So where we are, I know that their parents are saying something else, and the school is saying something else too, back and forth. We work on evidence, and where I'm sitting, the school has not been able to give me any information of any prior incidents as well of Brian or being bullied. Now, the problem with this as well is that in most cases, bullying, even if, let's say, it occurs and the parents know, or the child tells the parents, you might find that the child will say to their parents, don't go and report it at school. They will handle it because of other, maybe they might be accused of telling parents being a mama's child or whatever. So generally kids, learners don't allow their parents to go and report it. But as far as it goes, the parents have never communicated with the school reporting any incident of bullying with regard to Brian.
Well, you began...
And this,
Pardon me for interjecting, MEC. You began to tease out, in a sense, some of the broader themes, and I'd love to hear from Victorine around children resisting, as the MEC is saying, their parents doing anything to intervene at school. What's been your experience with this, Victorine?
Yeah, thank you so much, Imam, and thank you, Mr. MEC. It's very true. I'm sure you would have seen me acknowledging it when the MEC said so. Parents have not actually built communicative environment for children. Many parents have failed to do that. And children don't tend to even trust parents in the fact that parents will handle this without actually making them feel like they are the reasons why they are being bullied. But again, the MEC already gave the first most important reason, which is not only their peers accusing them to be chickens or to be weak-minded, to not be able to face their own dilemmas, but also even the members of, I would say in this case, the members of staff, like the teachers or administrative staff that would have been involved, tending to blame the child, to say, why did you have to take it home? You should have allowed the school to resolve it. So many factors contribute to children not being able to voice their dilemma when they face them out there in school. The one most important one is trust. We adults have to really teach children how to trust us when they are in times of difficulties, not only when we are in a celebratory mood, because we've taught our children many a time that we can celebrate them, but when they are failing, we cannot stand there for them. And I say failing in quotes because, like the MEC said, we don't have facts in the case.
Again, going back to the issue around complexity, and Shahida, I'd love to bring you in on this one. In fact, just today, again, and MEC, you commented on the events surrounding, 2 learner suicides earlier today. We're not quite sure, again, what the incidents really were caused by, but when we see children, taking their own lives and hearing the stories later on of some of the struggles that they've been going through, as much as the issue is complex, families will often begin to blame themselves or begin to think, well, what signs did I miss out? What could I have been watching for? Shahida, is that the right route to take? And can you really tell when a child is being bullied?
Iman, absolutely. I think one needs to look at symptoms, a cluster of symptoms in context, not to look at an isolated symptom and then reach the foregone conclusion that my child is being subjected to some form of abuse, but look at everything, the child's behavior, the child's performance, the child's interaction with everybody, the child's level of interest, motivation, performance at school. All those indicators will certainly inform that something is amiss, and that should be a pointer, a red flag that parents need to look out for, because often a victim will either withdraw, isolate, and of course, it will feed into the low self-esteem where they see themselves responsible for what has happened, and the fear of retribution, fear of reprisal, fear of further rejection from their peers, and also being ridiculed sometimes or humiliated or chastised by the parents. Those are certainly deterrents that would prevent children. So the telltale signs are there, and we urge parents always to look out for a sudden shift in the behavior of the child. A child that suddenly may become overly weepy, refuses to eat, is not sleeping or sleeping a lot, and loses interest in everything around them. A child that suddenly shows no interest in activities that they enjoy. So I think those are things that we need to look out for. But again, more training needs to be done on sensitizing, conscientizing not only parents, educators, learner support agents, supporting staff. I think everybody has a role to play in the protection and safeguarding of children, to look out for anything that's amiss, because we have found in our experience, it's the supporting staff on the ground that have often reported inappropriate, outrageous and bullying of victims. So, I think we can do a lot more in terms of prevention, because we have become a reactive society. And I think prevention and early intervention is key, but we have to also create opportunities where parents and everybody else, the larger community, is equipped, empowered and enabled to reach out timeously.
And that's part of the big issue, isn't it? That a lot of children don't live in normal households where there might be a 2-parent setup, or even if there is, perhaps those parents are working and not always there, that it becomes this, extended societal responsibility to look out for children. But again, MEC, I want to come back to you. And what can we learn, and what work are you doing in terms of what South Africans can learn from international best practice around the world on how we can create an anti-bullying climate in our schools? Because at least in many cases, that's the one place where there can be, consistent scrutiny around things like behavioral change and creating safe spaces. Notwithstanding, of course, some of the problems we have where there is sexual harassment and abuse of learners by the very, education staff themselves. MEC, I think you might be on mute.
Okay. Yes, I was on mute. Sorry about that. As I was saying, that firstly, also adding to what my co-panelists are saying there, the parental involvement is very critical to help us to unearth these particular challenges that are faced by learners. So we always urge parents that through our program that we are going to be doing, that parents must just ask their children 2 questions every day. Firstly, the first one is, how was school? Every day, And then the second one will be, do you have homework? Those two questions on their own, over time, we do believe that it can get the child to open up if there are problems that the child is experiencing in school. For instance, with regard to bullying. So we always encourage parents that just ask those two questions every day to your child. Secondly, we're doing a lot of, we've got a comprehensive program around bullying. We have what we are putting in our schools, and some schools already is there, that we have what we call an anonymous bullying box, where learners can write the names of those potential bullies. Then we are able to sort of get them and then put them in a particular program. We are currently in finalizing our MOU with the correctional services, as well as bringing on also our sister departments, say community safety, social development, health, and sports, SREC, to work with us within this particular program. In schools, we have appointed, we've got what we call 500 peers. We have got 500 learners who are peers who are in school, who have been trained. So that, because most of the time, the learners are able to talk amongst themselves much more easier than talk to the educator or the parents. So those peers assist us to identify potential learners that are having problems, and also who could be problematic learners. So we have these particular learners that we have identified through our program to assist us to identify these learners, so that we can, because the purpose of it is not to identify these learners who are bullies and also who are victims. Or let me start with the bullies, that to remove them in the system. Obviously, when we get them, we take them through a particular disciplinary process, sometimes to suspend and expel. But over and above, we have a program to ensure that we rehabilitate them through our partnership with a couple of NGOs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so desperate to ask you, MEC, again, because we're just up against the clock and so many, perspectives to pursue. It's still this concept of let's get all of the, connected departments together, social development. We can't be in still the planning phase around that. I hear what you're saying about the peer, the peer learnership program. I hear what you say about the bully box. It sounds like these are new things. If they aren't, please tell me how effective things like the bully box have been in identifying bullies at school. Really quickly, before I move on to what next in our conversation.
Oh, yes. No. Obviously, these are still to do, some of them. But what we have, when I say the 500 peers, we've got 120 social workers that have come in from DST that have been, we have an MOU with the social development that are designated for our schools. We have the 500 also key modules that are from DST. These are for substance abuse, to engage learners who are affected by substance abuse, etc. So we do have this in place. We have a hotline that we've shared with our schools, is 116, so that learners can utilize and parents can utilize. It's a Gauteng hotline.
All right. We'll try and share that hotline number with our viewers once more. Victorine, what do you think about what the MEC is saying in terms of some of the steps and interventions they have put in place? Is this enough? Is this the way to go?
It is enough. It is a way to go, but it doesn't mean that there is nothing to add on. The one thing that we fail to understand is that the South African parents have lost self-esteem as well. I call on the South African parents to really work on themselves, because it's very, very difficult for us to raise children whose self-esteems are high if our own self-esteems are not high. So apart from establishing trust, like I said before, apart from having open lines of communication, including the other measures that the MEC has put in place, may we please call on the Presidency of South Africa to make sure that the parents or the children are raised by people who have their own self-esteem. Can we please call on families to make sure that the adults, caregivers to children, have a high self-esteem?
And how will they get that, Victorine? Sorry? You're asking for the presidency to ensure that, parents or children are raised by parents who have self-esteem. How is the presidency going to do that?
We have to restore the power of parents, because another thing that you have to understand is that most parents, like you said correctly, or I don't know who said this, but most children are being raised in environments where the parents are absent, and the people who are raising these children don't seem to have authority over these children in a way. And if we can really make sure that the child rights principles that we put in place are actually aligned with the living conditions that these children are raised in, it will make a lot of difference. Because a child who does not know the role of a parent, the role of a guardian, cannot even look after another child and cannot accept to be looked after. So there are so many things, but the first thing I call on is the living condition of children. Because if you look at it, most of the time, these children who are bullies or who get bullied and cannot say it would come from homes that are either broken, are either lacking support, are either or having overworked or absent parents, and many other factors in it. So we should actually have plans in place that look after the adults as well, because the adults cannot raise a child if they themselves are not fit.
Dr. Umar, I want to come to you really quickly. I was reading a study about what, the best practice from South Korea, for example, and what they found could work and doesn't work, in fact, when it comes to bullying. That bully reduction programs which focus on a bully's behavior are largely ineffective. And one of the winning opportunities that we have, especially in a country like ours, by analogy, could possibly be, again, going back to creating an anti-bullying climate which involves, a multi-disciplinary approach inside the school environment and then extending into the homes. Please just share with us just what different measures South Africa could perhaps bring to bear on the situation where it alters, child's experience at school and gives them a sense of empowerment when they're being bullied.
Thank you, Iman. So child protection is not a one-man show. You are absolutely correct. You are spot on. It's a multidisciplinary approach to intervention, to responding, to prevention. And I respectfully agree with the MEC, but I want to say to the MEC that if we look at the roll numbers in schools, and if we look at the number of social workers that are placed, social workers are placed one social worker, and just look at the hundreds of children that the social worker is expected to reach out to, or the psychological services. So it is so disproportionate. It is so unrealistic. One cannot expect that a professional to reach out and to be effective in handling these kind of challenges, because we need to also appreciate that victim and the victimizer has also come from a background of adversity and certainly requires intervention, requires support. There's deep wounds that need to be healed. So we need to work on that. And you cannot expect a single social worker that has to deal with, or a single psychologist that has to deal with these numbers. We also need healthcare professionals coming in, looking at the well-being, the physical well-being, the physiological states, and even the mental health. Mental health is essential and critical in addressing this at school, because the implications and the impact it has on interactions and other impulse control issues are also something that we have to consider. So yes, a multidisciplinary approach is the way to go. We need to bring in all the different government departments, health, DSD, education, wherever if possible, because these are systemic challenges. We also need to look at sports and recreational facilities and the ministries that are involved in that, how best to protect children, how best to distract children from the aggressive impulses, to rechannel those aggressive impulses into constructive means of release. So yes, Iman, it's a no-brainer. We have to go that route.
We're out of time, but I want to appreciate each of you for sharing a perspective on this really important and troubling problem of bullying and the consequences of bullying in South Africa. And there are resources, as each of you have alluded, that can provide family and individual support. Victorine Mbongshu, thank you for talking to us tonight. MEC Matome Chilwane, appreciate your time. And Dr. Shahida Umar from the Teddy Bear Clinic, thank you so much for being with us tonight.